Hi, and welcome to another episode of The South Side of Things. Uh, the last episode was a couple of months ago, and that has been too long. So I decided to make some time and actually do a full episode today. So recently, I watched this documentary called Death by China, and it was very thought provoking in that it talked about Americans, everyday Americans, losing their jobs because the corporations or the companies and factories that they're working for closed up and moved their production to China. Now, the reasons for this, according to the documentary, are because China manipulates its currency to make its exports cheaper. It also subsidizes its exports. And then, of course, China has uh, virtually no human rights track record, so they could use child labor, slave labor, prison labor. Uh, they have no environmental laws in place, so combining all of these things, cost of production is very, very cheap. And so a lot of these companies have closed down, leaving ordinary Americans unemployed. Now, all of these things I've outlined before are really bad, and the documentary does a good job of outlining them to the viewer. However, I have a few problems with the way the documentary goes about doing this, and I feel that at the end of the day, the documentary does not uh, address the root cause of all of these things. My first objection is the way in which they present some of these issues with respect to the language and the visuals that they use. For example, when talking about the currency manipulation, export subsidies, child labor, prison labor, etc., the graphics that they use are very shocking. They have Chinese fighter planes flying over the US, dropping bombs labeled export tax rebates and income tax rebates, and I think that's a little excessive. I think that immediately puts into the mind of the viewer the image of war, for which the US is very famous. And yes, it's a good strategy if you're the filmmaker doing that to think that to create in the minds of your viewers that there is a war between China and America, and China is out to get the US, as is the central premise of this uh, documentary. However, I feel like the deeper problem of the issue of this happening was not dealt with by the documentary, and I want to talk a little bit about that. At one point in time, the film talked about American corporations, packing up, closing up shop, and leaving to go to China to do these things to produce at lower costs, and leaving a bunch of these people unemployed. Now, I have a problem with the notion of an American corporation. By saying American corporation, it seems to invoke certain values, what the American Constitution stands for, and all of these things, which are lovely, laudable values and morals and all of these things. However, I challenge the notion that there is a multinational corporation that can be tied to uh, some country that can be branded as one being from a country. Calling it an American company, you'd think that it does possess some of those values, and that it cares about its workers, and that it would do everything necessary to ensure that its workers have that, American dream and whatever. However, that's not the case. These big MNCs and TNCs and all that, these big corporations have no obligation to its workers, to their workers rather. Their sole obligation is to their shareholders, and they just need to make money. And so, if it is that closing up a shop and putting all of it, their thousands of American workers on the breadline by going to China to reduce production costs is what will make it more profitable, then they're going to do that. The notion of patriotism and the flag and freedom and all these things, that doesn't even come into play into their decision making. So I really don't believe that there's something called an American corporation, because at the end of the day, money is all that matters, and anything else will just prevent these corporations from making money. Going back to the documentary for 1 second, it talks about, in brief, the cancer villages that exist in China because of all the toxic toxic metals and pollutants that are in the soil and in the water and all of that. And that's there because of all these industries and whatever, and there's no uh, environmental legislation in place as to how to dispose of things and what not to put where and all of these things. And coming back to these corporations, they weren't allowed to do it in the U.S. because their U.S. has strong environmental laws and of course labor laws and all these things. So they just moved to a place where they can do it. And to me, that is morally and ethically wrong. Legally, it is perfectly fine. Economically, it's wonderful and even desired. It makes sense, and you increase your profits. People have always wanted free and cheap labor, but I think now what's driving it even more is this whole notion that, the be all and end all of businesses is to gain that profit. The profit motive is why you go into business, and you do anything. You do anything to get that profit at the end of the quarter. And then at the end of the year, we look at how well these corporations, how many billions of dollars they've made in profits and how high their stock value is, and we say, yep, that's a very successful company, without thinking about what they would have had to do to get to where they are. Don't get me wrong. I fully believe that if you could make a cupcake that everybody enjoys and everybody buys, you should be rewarded for that. But not if it turns out that the cupcake is actually made by someone in a dungeon in your basement who you don't pay, who you starve, and who's there 24/7 around the clock just making cupcakes. Then you haven't done the work. You shouldn't be rewarded for that work. So getting back to the documentary, I don't think it tackled the root cause of this entire problem. China is just responding to a demand for a certain product, and it's basically the market at work here. Corporations like these want a place where they could get cheap labor, and they don't have to worry about in properly disposing of whatever waste and whatever, because doing that would cost more money. So China here is just filling a need filling a need in the global marketplace for corporations that need to do business cheaply. So here we have the demand and supply principle being applied here. I mean, if China suddenly decides to grow a conscience and stops human rights violations and then implements strict environmental laws, then these corporations will just pack up and go somewhere else. There's nothing in place to hold them morally accountable. And here's where I think we have the biggest problem. Because when you start worshipping at the altar of the almighty dollar, there is nothing you won't do, basically. There's humans begin to you begin to see humans as just a workforce. You start seeing things in terms of dollars, and I don't think any good could come from that. So in conclusion, the film does a really good job of talking about, okay, the problem that exists right now is that the jobs are being lost to China, who isn't playing by the rules of the World Trade Organization and all of these things by doing their subsidies, and then not respecting the International Charter of Human Rights by doing forced labor, child labor, etc. However, it does not, as I've said many times in this short video, it does not tackle the root cause of all of these things. So the documentary is called Death by China. Watch it, and it's available on Netflix. That's where I saw it. And comment, let me know if I'm friends with you. We could have a face-to-face and talk about it some more. Okay, keep watching. I intend to do videos more regularly. Thanks for watching. Bye.